You've heard me talk about this before in the podcast, but what if we fed our hair with the same nourishing ingredients that we feed our bodies? I've been using simple superfood-inspired products from Hair Food, and I have seen amazing results. I've talked to you before about this on the show, about the shampoos and conditioners that they have, but this summer, because of all the lake water and chlorine, I've added avocado and argan oil hair mask to my regimen. And hello, my hair feels so smooth, shiny, and healthy. What I love is every Hair Food product is free of sulfates, parabens, dyes, mineral oils, and is certified PETA, cruelty-free, because your hair does not want to be eating that stuff. Not only are their products free of the bad stuff, but they're full of high-quality superfood ingredients, and they smell amazing. So if you're looking for nourished, healthy hair, it's got to be Hair Food. Look for it at Amazon, Walmart, and Target. Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant, sitting with you here on July 8th. I hope everyone had a lovely, lovely 4th of July. Today, we are feeling emotions and noticing that when we feel our emotions, how can that change your relationship? And we are having a guest speaker on today, the one and only, the husband, the Graham Chalfant. Yep, he's on the show today. This was one of the shows that, oh my goodness, did we get feedback on? Lots of positive feedback. People loved this show because I had Graham on and we got really raw, vulnerable, and talked about all the things in our relationship. We talked about our struggles. We talked about our triumphs, and we talked about how we changed our relationship. Yes. Many of you wrote in and messaged me on social media and said that, this show was so helpful because you actually played it with your husband, boyfriend, partner. So just a suggestion, if you find it helpful to do so, many of you have asked me, I can't get my boyfriend to change, or I want my husband to really get into this, and I don't know how, and I don't know how to change him. Even if you're not trying to help them get in their adult chairs, it's just, how can I change my relationship with the person that I am with? And this show is the one to listen to. And by the way, I've done a lot of shows on healthy relationships. And if you want to learn how to find those shows, you just go to theadultchair.com/podcast, and there's a search bar and you can put in any term. So put in healthy relationships. You can put in Graham Chalfant. He's done a few shows with me actually, but this was a big one on really opening up about our marriage and really some of the trouble that we've had in the marriage. And again, what we had to do to find not just relief, but really get ourselves in a better and stronger place. So that's what's going on today on the Adult Chair Podcast. This is the second show in our summer series. In addition to that, don't forget what we're doing this whole month of July in the membership is I am chatting with you about cultivating more peace in your life, living in balance. How do we do that? I teach you how to do that the whole month. You've missed nothing. It's in the membership. That's at theadultchair.com/membership. And the only other thing I want to mention, because we are just days away from the Adult Chair Coaching Certification official announcement. But I just want to say, you're going to get the official announcement on July 12th if you are on the wait list. If you want to get on the wait list, just go to theadultchair.com/certification and you can jump right on there. And then you will be alerted as to all the fine details about this certification. And if we have spots left, we will then announce it and open this up to the general public on August 1st. So if you're really interested in the certification, we have a giant wait list. So please jump on that wait list if you are serious about becoming an adult chair certified coach. Would love to have you. All right. So let us jump into this podcast with my husband, the one and only Graham Chalfant. Here we go. We're talking today about how feeling your emotions can change your relationship, because that is exactly what we did, and it changed our relationship. Here we go. Graham Chalfant. Today we have a very special guest on. It is the Graham Chalfant, the husband, is going to be on with me today. This will be his third appearance on the show. We're talking today about how feeling your emotions can change a relationship. Yes, you heard me correctly. You know how big I am on feeling emotions. I've talked about this on, I don't even know how many shows, I've lost track. But I'm going to talk to you today with my husband, Graham. And we're going to share some very personal, intimate details about our marriage and how by feeling emotions. I'm just going to say it was Graham that had to feel his emotions because, I've been feeling mine for a long time. By feeling emotions, you really can change your relationship. And we're going to break it down for you today. Today's going to be yet another awesome show. It's great to have Graham with us today. You want to say a quick hello, Graham?
After that, yes, great to be back. I would like to point out for those listening that maybe heard an earlier podcast, I have been on twice, as Michelle said. Number 42, we found out, and then number 49. And then it stopped, and I haven't been on for 200 podcasts now. So I'm not sure what I said on the last one, but I'm trying to get invited back before 400.
You better be on your best behavior. You're not going to be on for another 200. That's all I'm saying. All right, you guys. So we're going to, actually, just let me say this because I know we have a lot of new people. I just want to say hello to all of you and shout out and say thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everybody that shares the show. My goal is to help the world learn how to live in the healthiest place that they can be, which is the adult chair. And their adult chair. That's the healthiest version of themselves. So thank you so much for sharing the show. If you're brand new to the show, head on over to theadultchair.com and you will find all kinds of great stuff over there. So that is it. Here we go. We're going to jump into, again, how feeling emotions can change a relationship with a very, very special guest, Graham Chalfant. So Graham Chalfant, husband, the one and only. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Again, on number three podcast. But again, you better be good or you're not getting invited back for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'll try my best. It's good. It's good to be back.
Yeah. So why don't we tell everybody just a little bit. We've been married for how long?
It'll be 25 years this November.
It's been a long time, people.
Longer for Michelle than for me.
That is true. That is so true. It's been a really long time. And I'm here to tell you, for those of you that are just now getting married, thinking about getting married, or have been married for a while, it is true what people say, and that is it takes work. Not that it can't be fun. However, it takes work because here's what's true. When we engage in a relationship with another human being, our childhood issues are going to rear up because this person is here to help us to work through those childhood issues. Unfortunately, most of it's unconscious and we don't know it, but so you can use that relationship and really it can be a very positive thing if you bring consciousness and awareness into that relationship. And as I've mentioned on so many shows, you've got to have raw, open, honest communication in order to have a really successful relationship. Would you agree, Graham?
I would.
Yes.
And I came from an upbringing that had no raw, honest, open communication. So I was a little more challenging than most.
It took Graham a little while to catch up, you guys. I'm not going to lie about that. I came from that, even though my mother was not Italian, it just felt like my father was 100% Italian. So, and we always hung around his family. So there was a lot of loud emotions, crying, yelling, hugging, kissing. It was all of it, very, very emotional. And then Graham came from the extreme opposite. So as one of our marriage counselors, because I do believe in that, you really need that help along the way, she coached us and she said, because I said at one point, Graham needs to be more emotional. And of course, he thinks I'm too emotional and I need to bring it down a little bit. And I'm like, think about this, you guys. I have to just use this example. On Christmas, like, I remember when the AirPods came out, he's the hardest freaking person to buy for. So I bought those AirPods, like, how many years ago? 3 or 4 years ago, whenever they came out.
Sure.
I was like, yeah, I've nailed it, for Christmas. And he's like, thanks. These are nice. I'm like, hello. So the marriage counselor that we were working with said, Michelle is like a very full box of Crayola crayons, like lots of emotion, lots of crayons, each crayon representing emotions. And she's very colorful, which is true.
Yeah, like the 164 pack with a sharpener in the side. Like, yes. You have every color. You have burnt umber. You got the whole deal.
And I said, yes. And Graham is like the 2 or 3 crayons you get at the restaurant where where you draw on the table and they give you the 2 or 3 pack of crayons, they put it on the table. So as far as coming together, imagine that, like, way back when. Graham's like, good God, you're like an emotional roller coaster. And I'm like, why are you so flat? So it's been a very interesting journey. So let's talk a little bit about, so when Graham and I first came together, and this is relevant to how we got to really feeling emotions and watching our relationship truly transform. When we first got together, again, coming from 2 extreme backgrounds, 2 very, very different backgrounds. Tell us, like, Graham, what was your experience like? What was it like for you?
Well, so I came from, again, kind of an English background with parents that did not show emotions and did not get in conflict with each other. And with Michelle, it was a little bit different than that. So, after we got kind of through the honeymoon phase and started really living together, it probably scared me a lot, her emotions. When we first got married and started living together, we had a puppy that we'd only had for a few weeks, and it had congenital health issues, and it ended up dying like after, again, 3 or 4 weeks. So we hadn't had the dog that long. For me, it was sad, but again, I didn't really even know this dog that well. Michelle, emotionally, like literally was like in bed for days with the blinds down, and it wasn't funny then, but I came in on day 2 or day 3 and kind of pulled the blinds up and clapped my hands and said, all right, let's get back to living. But in hindsight, I think it scared me because I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. I definitely didn't know how to deal with her emotions. And so I just preferred to sweep all that under the rug and not have the conversations and do whatever I could to avoid emotional situations.
Which was triggering for me because I grew up in a household where even though everyone was so emotional, if you guys probably know my story because I've talked about my father's twin brother that was the alcoholic, narcissist, and really he was a rager. When he would come over and disrupt a family dinner or get upset with my mom or my aunt or something like that, the next day I would want to talk about it and nobody would talk about it. It would just get swept under the carpet and no one would say a word. And this is what I found that was happening even with Graham then earlier on in our relationship. So he would, instead of emoting and really talking about what was going on, you would get like angry or snippy and it would be like out of left field. I'm like, what? Whoa. So for me, it was kind of mirroring, or not mirroring, but I guess unconsciously reminding me of my uncle, the rager, but at a much, you weren't raging on me. You were nothing like him. But again, it was my own childhood wounding. So when my uncle would come over, he would rage. Everyone would walk on eggshells. So we got very early on in this really like a cycle of something would happen in the household. He would snap at me or snip at me or whatever you want to call it. And then I'd walk on eggshells. And I've got I was very codependent back then. So then I'm trying to fix him. He doesn't know what to do with the emotions. It just really, how would you explain that? Would you add to that?
It was a lot of fun. No, but I think that the best example for many of those years, especially when the kids were younger, we have 2 boys, was on Sunday, because I was, working and was the sole breadwinner in the house. And Sunday I would start getting this stress because of work. Monday's coming, a lot of people have this stress. And I would take it out on Michelle and even the boys, but probably more so with Michelle. So she might say something innocent, or she might have 5 of her crayons come out of the box in terms of her emotion. So she's emotional about something. Maybe she's upset about something that wasn't done correctly in the house or whatever it might be. And yeah, I would, instead of sitting with her and letting her talk about it and listening like I know I should, back then it was more of, I would get angry. I would get aggressive verbally. Like she always jokes and calls me the lawyer. So I would do something like that. If she was lucky, I would go for a run, which burns off some of that energy, but never really dealt with it. It would, again, create this situation of going into the week of, like I said, Michelle and probably the boys walking on eggshells, not knowing when Dad was going to snap for no reason about something that usually seemed pretty minor, but obviously to me at the time, it seemed pretty major.
Yeah, for sure. So we used to call it Sunday stress. Like even my friends knew, everyone in the family would be like, oh yeah, it's Sunday. Is Grandma in Sunday stress? Yes, he is. Everyone knew Sundays were like not a great day. So moving on, so that was again 24 years ago. Moving on, as people know my story again, like I was always one that was blazing down this path of wanting to heal myself and work on self-worth and heal my codependency and self-esteem and all of these things. So I'm doing my work and I've always done that. And this was kind of a new concept for you, of course. I mean, you hadn't been someone that enjoyed or went to therapy. And I love to discover new things about myself and want to really like turn over those rocks and see what's in there and heal. And that's just part of who I am because I was a therapist and still am.
Yeah, that was not my thing.
Yeah.
I mean, my growing up and also just being a guy. I mean, not that there aren't guys that do their work, but more guys, get into sports or drinking or anything else other than we don't want to sit there and do therapy and look under the rocks.
Yeah. I did drag you to some, I remember way in the beginning of our marriage, my imago therapy training, I dragged you to that. I took you to some things.
Yeah.
To try to get you to open up.
Yeah.
But
it didn't work. But
it did not work for you. I kept growing and transforming though, Graham, right? Graham was stuck until quite recently.
Yeah, I was a caterpillar stuck and she'd already grown wings and flown away somewhere. Luckily, not too far.
Not too far. But anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a gist of what it was like for us in the beginning. Again, not that we didn't have really fun times and great times, but there was definitely a lot of stress going on that, again, if you were to look at us outside looking in, you wouldn't have guessed that, knowing our family, but not everyone, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors.
It was also unconscious times to me because we jumped right into getting married, jumped right into having our first kid, jumped right into having our second kid. And then it became that sprint of working full time, raising kids, just doing what you do. So, I mean, where we're heading with this probably is that once our youngest child left the house, we were empty nesters. Then it all slowed down. And then I think it became a little more apparent to me that I probably needed to figure out this feeling thing or it wasn't going to go well moving forward.
Yeah. And I think over the years, I continue, just because this is just part of who I am. I love to work on myself, and I love to help other people. So I learn it from myself and I learn it for others. So I'm doing this work, but I'm working through codependency. And one thing that I was never good at when we first got married was setting boundaries. I worked on that. And again, self-worth, all of these things. So I'm really growing this healthier version of myself on the inside. So I'm speaking up a lot more over all the last few years and not tolerating Sunday stress and the control and all this kind of stuff. And what I noticed was there was, of course, you'd say, well, I just snapped because you blah, 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 and I'm like, no, that's not true. Or no, that's not right. Anyway, I'm going to make a long story short and to say that you eventually went and found a coach that you started working with. And I was very proud that you plunged right in, I have to say, because having an empty nest when there are no more kids really holds a mirror up for where you are, doesn't it, Graham?
It sure does, Michelle.
Yeah, but I mean, you did. I think, and I remember saying things to you for years like, hey, I think this is your stuff. And you go, no, it's not mine, and blah, 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 blah. But then when you got this coach and a somatic therapist, and a somatic therapist really puts you in the body and starts helping you to feel what's going on, that's where this transformation started happening. So tell us a little bit about your journey of transformation when it comes to feeling your emotions, because I think, and this is why we wanted to do this show, it's been key to have you do this, because it's like, wow, things really transformed, not just in your life, but in our marriage together.
Yeah, certainly. And, I hope it's obvious to everyone on this, listen to this podcast that, it would not have worked very well for me to try to work with Michelle on the adult chair model since we were married together. So I was like the cobbler's son when it came to that. I didn't get any therapy from Michelle. But
I tried.
Yeah.
You were not willing.
So once we became empty nesters and figured out that we really needed to work on this if we were going to stay together for another 23, 24 years, yeah, I went out and found a somatic therapist and a coach. And Michelle and I also were doing some marriage therapy at the same time. So it all kind of came together. But probably the biggest takeaway for me, and I think it's true for anybody, but I think it's more true for men possibly, is Michelle would say to me over and over, you need to feel it. You need to feel the emotions. And honestly, I didn't have that toolkit. I wasn't brought up that way. Growing up around guy friends in Ohio, we didn't talk this way. And guys, for the most part, to this day, still don't talk this way very much. It's more talk about fantasy football and whatever. So I didn't really have, and she worked with me some like, well, is it joy or is it sad or is it, and that was okay, but it still wasn't getting me there. What kind of changed doing this work with a somatic therapist, what like Michelle said, is feeling the physical sensations that go along with an emotion. So not what's up in your head, what you're thinking about, not the emotion side of it, but really like the physical sensation. And I learned from somebody at some point that you really can't have an emotion without first having a physical sensation. That kind of is what tees you off or tips you off to knowing that you're even having an emotion. Then your brain jumps in like, what is this? Anger, whatever, makes up the stories, etc. So it's doing the work with the therapist and the coach and all. It was the Sunday in January, right before Christmas break ended this past year. And so if I still have Sunday stress, not like it used to be, but still like I've been kind of off from work for 2 weeks, working a little bit, but not, full time because of the holidays. And so I woke up on Sunday morning in bed and started having, I guess I would call it anxiety about all that I had to get done. Of course, over those 2 weeks, I planned to get all this stuff done. I didn't get most of it done. I was stressed that I didn't have it done. I was starting to feel anxiety. And because of doing this work, I stopped and said, okay, where do you feel this in your body? And I kind of knew the answer because I always feel in the same place. For me, it's a heaviness on my chest. It's like, I joke, it's almost like there's an elephant or something pushing down. So it's this weight. And that's the physical sensation that really triggers kind of all of my bad behavior with Michelle. So if I snap at her, it's because I first feel this weight on my chest, which I wasn't really aware of. And so for me, it really became about becoming aware of this feeling, this physical sensation first. And then what came to me, and partially it's because of the work I'd done with these folks, and partially it was just kind of thoughts coming to me as I laid there in bed, was stick with that feeling, which is the physical feeling, not the emotional feeling or whatever, but like just stick with it. Pay attention to that feeling in my chest. And as I did that, at first it was very uncomfortable. And then it started to lighten up and kind of expand in my body. And it went from being a very dense weight on my chest to being more of like a cloud around my whole body. And then eventually it went away. And it was the craziest thing. I kind of felt almost like giddy at the time because here's this big monster I'd been so scared of probably my whole life, but definitely my life with Michelle. And it was this weight and it was gone now. And I had this clarity, and the clarity was, okay, you've got the rest of Sunday. You've got a list of 20, 30, 40 things you could get done. But what would be the 3 things, if you got those done today, that you'd feel pretty good heading into this first Monday back after the holidays? And right away, I knew what those 3 things were. And I was more relaxed, and I actually got those 3 things done that day. Usually I'm stressed and I don't get anything done. So that was like just a huge game changer for me, that this feeling that I've been running from, and when I say running from, it usually meant, lashing out at Michelle or being short with the kids or, all this bad behavior, was being caused by this physical sensation that I didn't want to deal with. And I didn't know how to deal with, really. And then, so a week or 2 after that, I had a session with this somatic therapist, and she described it as that feeling has a peak to it. And what I was never doing in the past, as soon as I felt that feeling in my chest building, I would right away go to one of my old strategies, which probably would be adolescent chair, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my adolescent chair strategies of lashing out, responding poorly, whatever it was. And she said, but by sitting there and letting it rise up to the peak, which didn't take very long, it then allows it to dissipate and allows me to see that that peak is pretty low. And then as she said this, I was like, wow. I said, for me, I never thought about it this way because I've never thought about this physical sensation. It was like the peak was as high as Mount Everest for me. I was scared that this peak of emotion was going to be 29,000 feet up. And it was kind of like standing at the bottom of that mountain when I first started feeling it. And I could see about 10 feet up, and then clouds came in. I had no idea how high that peak went. And as I just sat with it, I realized it wasn't a Mount Everest. It was more of a molehill. And I just needed to kind of let it run its course. And by just sitting there and feeling it, it did go away. And I came again to a place of clarity. So again, that was the work that led up to that. And then frankly, it was just that epiphany on a Sunday morning. And it's been a huge game changer, not just with Michelle, but I get short with other people over, the big one is political discussions, big shocker there, right? And certain political discussions, I will get aggressive in an argument. And I'm trying to get better with that again it's the same thing. Like when somebody says something politically that is opposed to what I believe and maybe even scares me some, I feel this pressure in my chest that's so uncomfortable. I have to then kind of verbally attack them or verbally argue with them, as opposed to maybe just sitting with that feeling in my chest, letting it peak, which again takes seconds, really 30 seconds, I don't know, and then letting it dissipate, and then coming to the discussion from a much clearer place. That was a lot.
I don't think I've ever heard you talk that much, Graham.
I'm just trying to get invited back, trying to be a good guest.
No, that was really good. Thank you. Very vulnerable, very open.
Yeah.
Authentic. So true. But I have to say, I just want to let people know, that was that epiphany moment. I remember because I thought something was wrong with you, because I get up like really early, and I'd gone back upstairs to check on you. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And I walked into the bedroom and you were like awake. And I'm like, what's happening? You're like, I'm having all these awarenesses about emotions. Like it was this total amazing experience that you had. But you had been working on this even before. I mean, I remember last year we were even talking about a lot about like owning your reality and owning your part in this. But I think it was hard again because these emotions that it was like almost blocking you from your part.
Yeah, it was like a panic actually.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't just describe it that way before, but looking at it in hindsight now. And so I know that on your podcast, you talk a lot about stories and all. And so what happened with me is that when I felt that uncomfortable feeling, which in my mind or subconsciously, I thought it was going to become a horrible feeling, I would just naturally trigger. I went right into my stories, right? And so if Michelle was close by, then my story was, even if she wasn't close by probably, but she's the problem. If she would just do this, then I wouldn't have this feeling. And if this was different, and it became all the stories. And unfortunately, they always say the one that you love the most and is closest to you is the one that tends to take the brunt of it. And so for the Sunday stress, as an example, it was Michelle. And it could have been the boys. I mean, when my boys were 7 and 9 or something, maybe one of them broke something and my reaction was much worse than it would have been normally because, again, I was feeling that pressure. But yeah, no, I think that feeling, my automatic, and it was automatic, I mean, it happened so fast, I would just trigger right into, again, kind of verbally attacking, verbally trying to back somebody down, change the story. One of the big triggers with Michelle is like complaining about stuff. So, gosh, I wish our living room was a little bigger. I wish whatever. And if I was feeling the pressure already, that would then trigger me. And I would be like, I might be nice about it, but I'd be trying to talk her out of it. Like, well, you're lucky because a lot of people don't have living rooms at all. Who knows what the story was, but I try to talk her out of her emotions, which I'm sure she would tell you doesn't do much for intimacy and connection to have somebody trying to talk you out of something. So that was probably the other one. I make it sound like it was always aggressive. Sometimes it was just me trying to convince her that the way she was seeing the world was wrong. And if she would stop complaining and look at the bright side of life, everything would be great. But the only reason I was doing it is because inside I was feeling that pressure and I did not want to feel it. So I was going to try to shut down whatever was causing that what I would call anxiety.
And what occurs to me when you say that is when you grew up, again, this is more of that mirroring from childhood and the dysfunctions that we grow up with that then play out in a marriage or any kind of relationship. So you grew up in a household where nobody really talked about much of anything that was controversial or conflict, like none of that. And I grew up in the opposite. So We talked about everything. And what you learned, or we learned, I knew this about myself, but when we were in one of our marriage counseling sessions, she said, well, Michelle just talks. Like, I'll walk through the living room and be like, damn, it's so small in here. It drives me nuts. But it's like, I don't need it to be fixed. I'm not going to cry. It's like, I talk about everything. Like, I look at something and it comes right out of my mouth, but I don't have a lot of meaning to it. But the way you were hearing it, again, coming from a household that was like more just quiet, flat, like not a lot of emotion, you would then rush in and try to fix me. And like you said, talk me out of it, which again, then I'd get pissed. And I'm like, what the hell is he trying to fix me for? I'm just saying, I'm ticked about whatever, my car like this or my living room. And I've already forgotten about it. I've moved on. Like, what are you even trying to fix me for? And then we'd have an argument about that. So of course, like you said, you think about intimacy and think about all these people that have issues with intimacy. I'm doing like a right turn here, Graham, because I'm thinking about, I tend to digress.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Hold on, folks.
Buckle your seatbelts, everybody. I'm thinking about when I was at a party probably 10 years ago when we just moved to Nashville and we were with a bunch of couples. And I believe it or not, I tend to ask a lot of questions to total strangers and people I know. I love to learn about people. It's just something I enjoy. So we were with these, group of, 7 or 8 couples. And all the women were in one room. And somehow we fell into the discussion of sex. And I went around the room and I was like, how often do you have sex with your husband? How often do you have sex? How often do you have sex? And they were being honest, but I was shocked at the number of people. It was just the women and they were communicating. The men were in the other room.
I'm sure we were in the other room talking about the lack of sex, so highly likely.
Like one girl was like, oh, I have to have sex every day or my husband gets pissed at me. And another girl's like, oh, like every few months, but God, he drives me nuts. I can't stand having sex with him. And anyway, and then one other girl goes, yeah, I try to do it every 2 weeks, but it wasn't like, not one of them, and again, there was, 7 or 8 of us, not one of them said, oh, I just really enjoy, that time and we enjoy sex and we have beautiful, intimate moments. And again, through all the years, I've been a therapist and a coach and, just talking to random people and whomever about this. It just makes me sad because so many people communicate like that, or they fall into this lack of intimacy. And I think it's because there's so much buildup there's so much that's unsaid. And I think about you and I, you're trying to fix me. I'm trying to be myself. You're not feeling your emotions. I'm not speaking up because I'm afraid because you're going to get mad at me. And, so it's just like, but yet on the outside, if you saw us at like our son's soccer game many years ago, you'd be like, oh, aren't they the happiest couple? But it's like, and it's not that we were miserable fighting all the time, because honestly, we didn't hardly ever fight, but we weren't having the important conversations. We were shoving things, I learned in my family, especially when my uncle was over to walk on eggshells. You, again, reminded me unconsciously of my uncle. Not that you would ever get angry to his level, but even a little bit, it would make me shrink. I'd get scared. I'd turn into a child. I wouldn't know what to say, and I'd lose my voice. So I gained that, though. After working on that over the years, I realized that's where a lot of things started changing for me. But when you don't feel your emotions, there's a projection of pain on another person. And it's that person you're in relationship with. So that pain, again, could be the fixing that you were doing with me. But there's that projection or fixing, or you, instead of feeling emotions, what humans do when they're in a relationship is they project something else out. So the key for us, this was really pivotal, because we were, again, I don't know, do you want to talk about our sex life, Graham?
That's exactly what I want to do.
No, but I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to say this, just in case we have young ears listening to the show,
Or my mom.
I'm going to say this. The attraction, and I've said this to you, when you started feeling your emotions, you also stopped not just projecting on me, but using those vices. So like, instead of drinking, instead of going for runs forever, instead of, all these different things that you were doing to stop feeling your emotions, when it was like this beautiful domino effect in a very positive way. When you started to feel your emotions, you also started to own your reality. You started to own your reality instead of projecting it back on me that it's my fault or, there's something wrong with me. You started, and you've always been really good, I have to say, at apologizing, which is huge in relationships. But when you started feeling your emotions, you started owning your reality. You started apologizing, but there was a sincerity there that I never saw. And that for me was so attractive. Wait, what did I just say to you? That was so sexy when oh, yeah. When you said you were sorry the other day. Like, I'm really sorry that I've done this to you for all these years. I've blamed you and twisted things around and tried to make things your fault when really it was on me. And I'm really sorry. And I looked at you and I go, that was the sexiest thing you've ever done. Like, just to take responsibility in that way. Because I remember even last year, I'd say to you, you've got some anger in there. And you'd say, well, of course I do. It's from my dad. What do you want me to do about it? So it was still this like pushing away, like who the hell wants to sit and own what they don't like about themselves? Or that's the shadow. This is, I've done a ton of podcasts on the triggers and shadows. But the thing is, it's so scary. But when we're able to own those darker aspects of self, we transform. And that happened to you. Again, that was so sexy. When you finally said, you know what? I do have some anger that comes out sideways, and I'm so sorry. That floored me. And I remember I started to cry, and I was like, I've waited 20 years for you to say that. Thank you. Instead of saying, yeah, it's my dad's, who cares? Or yeah, so what? What do you want me to do? You don't think I'm working on it? Like, it was like an excuse instead of just really, truly owning it. But I don't think you could have owned it until you're able to feel it. Like, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah.
So helpful for other people to hear this.
Yeah. Again, from the guy's perspective, a couple things. One, you mentioned before, you changed the dance over the last couple of years, right? You started setting more boundaries. You started owning stuff and saying, I might have accused you of something of the way you said it. And if you knew that wasn't true in the past, you wouldn't have stood up and you would have walked on eggshells, and you started changing that. You said, that's not the way I'm feeling. I'm not going to own that for you, which I think kind of shook me up a little bit, which might have led to me saying, okay, I need to figure this out because she's not playing the same game anymore. So I would say that started it. So
thank God for the adult chair, because that's what I did. I really got into my adult, and I was like, I know I need to set boundaries here.
Yeah. So I would say, and again, I'll just say from the guy's perspective, but any women listening that are dealing with this, this kind of marriage or situation, is that you can change the dance, and you don't have to be. She was never really mean about it, maybe a couple of times. But most of the time you weren't mean, but it was just, you were very clear. You're like, I'm not owning that. You're throwing crap at me that's not mine to own. That's your stuff. That's your whatever. And so that changed the dance. And then the work that I was doing with the somatic therapist and with the coach, I would say that it's for, again, I'm only one guy, but for me as a guy, to be told you have anger issues, etc., is kind of like being told, talk Japanese. Like, I don't have the tools to do that. So I could hear you say that, and I knew that, and probably felt some shame about it. It wasn't until, again, I started connecting. It's not a feeling of anger as much as it is this weight on my chest. And sometimes it got so bad, I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. That was the part that I couldn't control. And that's where the anger would come out sideways, because for me, it was I'm either going to have the anger come out sideways by yelling or being short or being critical or whatever, or I really felt like I was going to explode. I mean, that was the feeling of it. And then when I learned that I could just sit with it, and again, in 30 seconds, that heaviness, that feeling literally would melt away if you can just sit with just that feeling. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to analyze it. You don't want to do anything with it except pay attention to that physical sensation. So again, for the women out there that are listening that have maybe a guy who's got anger issues or is snappy or whatever, if you can either share this podcast or share the concept of, just asking a simple question, where, when you're angry at me, where in your body do you feel it? And they may be like, what do you mean? I don't know. But if they spend a few minutes, usually someone will say it's in their gut, in their chest, in their throat, in their shoulders. Like, for me, it's always my chest. And then if it really gets bad, I feel like I'm going to just like jump out of my skin. But, I think that if they can connect the dots and say, oh, when I'm short with you, whatever it is, whatever they're doing that you don't like or is not good for the relationship, if they can connect that to what that feeling is and start being more aware of it, and if they can get to the point where all of a sudden you do something that triggers them and they go, I'm feeling it now. There it is. It's in my chest. Like, that is a quantum leap forward for them to be able to do that. And then the next part would be, hey, I heard this crazy husband on this podcast with Michelle. And he actually said that even though it feels terrible in the moment because you've never really paid attention to it before, if you can sit with that, even just for 30 seconds or so, and just pay attention to that physical sensation and see what it does. And again, I think that most people, and I know my somatic therapist would tell you, it usually kind of dissipates that really terrible feeling, and it doesn't take long. Again, in their mind, that peak feels like it's huge. It's not very big at all. And I think those two pieces for guys, I just know I felt very disempowered in the relationship with the emotions. And so I didn't want to deal with them. And I'd rather just push back on Michelle and blame it on my dad or whatever else. And to be able to realize that it is a physical sensation that then I label as an emotion, I guess. And that it's just something, if I sit with it, I literally can come out on the other side to a place of clarity. I don't have all the stories about Michelle anymore. Or I see them for what they are, which is just stories. But honestly, if Michelle said, you're in a story right now, and I'm not, and I haven't let that energy dissipate, it's not going to go anywhere good. I'm going to argue that it's not a story, that it's true. And then what Michelle and I laugh about, we get in the, I can't remember what we call it, but these battles over details, and you never win those. So we were moving in the right direction, but that part has become a game changer to be able to sit with that feeling. And it's going to come up forever with me. I mean, that's just my natural reaction to having this energy rise up quickly when I get triggered. But again, whether it's with Michelle or whether it's a debate over politics with my brother-in-law, or whether it's somebody in the business world that's pushing my buttons, in all those situations, if I can become aware that, oh, there's that feeling in my body, pause for a second, be with it, let it dissipate, boy, just everything after that works out a lot better. And especially the intimacy and the communications between the two of us.
That's true, Graham.
I think she just rolled her eyes at that point.
I didn't. It's not an eye roll.
You can't see, but it was a cute face she made
It was a cute face. That was not an eye roll at all. Eye roll is contempt. I would not do that.
There was none of that, no.
You do that to me, though.
That's true.
See, Graham has found his adult chair, ladies and gentlemen. We are absolutely thrilled about that over here. I got to tell you. I'm serious, though. You truly amaze me. Like, what you've done, and I've said this to you. Of course, I've said it with a lot of emotion and tears because it moved me so deeply to watch you, like, sit at the table. We were out to dinner, when was it, like a month ago or so, like with my sister and brother-in-law and my mom, and we're all out to dinner. And my mom's like, so Graham, let's talk about your anger. I heard that you discovered that you have an angry part. And he's like, oh yeah, like it was like talking about a football game. Like, it was no big deal. No one was triggered. We giggled about it. Like, it was like, it just diffuses it. It takes the power away. And it was such a breath of fresh air. Like, something that people in my family, like, we've just kind of tiptoed around it. Don't say that. Not appropriate. Not okay. Don't trigger it. It's like when you own that stuff that scares you, the power, it doesn't trigger you anymore. It does not trigger you.
Another thing I would say is that it wasn't something that I knew scared me. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that all of a sudden my mouth is running and I'm arguing with someone at the table about politics or something else, and being able to connect it back to an actual physical sensation. And what I'm working on now, I'm not perfect, of course, but I'm working on catching it earlier, like feeling that feeling rise up and then sitting with it and letting it dissipate and then continuing on with the conversation. And again, it doesn't mean that I can't argue politics. I just don't want to do it from a reactive,
Yeah.
fight or flight, adolescent chair, say the wrong things, insult somebody, have everyone at the table looking at you funny because you're, so fired up about a minor subject, whatever it
Your
might
hands
be.
are shaking?
Maybe handshaking.
They were shaking
that could happen.
night. I know what you're talking about.
So, I think that's
true.
the difference. Like I said, I don't sit there and say I've got this monster inside me, anger, and I don't want to look at it. It's just, for me and probably most guys, it's just not even an awareness.
Right.
But you can, I think any guy can, I've done this now since this whole happened with guys I'm talking to, like when you get angry, or when you get scared or stressed, like where do you feel in your body? Like everyone's a little bit different, but every guy that I've talked to is able to describe a physical sensation. And a lot of times they're like, wow, I never even really thought about it. But that is what happens when I get angry at my wife or angry at my kids or scared about work or whatever it might be.
I'm not sure how to comment to that, Graham. I'm not going to say anything. I've done many, many podcasts on feeling your emotions and talking about the sensation in the body. Perhaps you missed those episodes.
That is, I like listening to podcasts a lot, and a lot of them are in the self-help and kind of therapy-related areas. And I do enjoy coming home and being like, Michelle, I heard on this podcast about stories or whatever it is. And I do give you credit for not just killing me because I do know you teach a little bit about all this.
I think I've done about 4 podcasts on that.
After I didn't get invited back after episode 49 or whatever, I've just stopped listening to podcasts. It can't be any good if I'm not on it at least once every 20 or 30.
I want to just say something because you've talked a lot about, for all the guys out there and for the men, I've worked with people for 25 years, almost 26 years now, and women have also. I mean, people think of women being emotional, but I have worked with plenty of women also that aren't able to feel their emotions. But when I say aren't able to, let me say that in a different way. Everybody has the ability to feel emotions. Think about it. Babies are born, babies cry, babies smile, babies are scared. Everybody feels emotions when we're born. At some point along our life journey, we turn them off, we turn them down, the volume way down so we don't feel them, we numb them out, etc. So what you're saying, feeling them in the body, this is something that women also, it's just every human needs to really practice this if you're not good at it. I had to really learn how to really sit with them. I remember really sitting with them. And it's true. I mean, when you guys feel an emotion without building a story around it, the emotion goes through you in 90 seconds. That's it. But what happens is people have an emotion, like, for example, for Graham, like, I'm really angry. And then there's a story around it, like, well, I'm angry because, Michelle did this or my kids did this and I've got this to do for work. And the more of a story that we're building around the emotion, the longer it stays with us, the more stuck we are in it. So the way to feel an emotion in 90 seconds is just to feel the emotion without story, no inner dialogue, nothing added to that emotion.
As you say that, one of the podcasts I was listening to had a strategy for before any bad behavior, say, and I'm going to say bad in quotation marks, but anything you want to change. So maybe drinking too much wine or smoking or overeating or whatever your bad behavior is. His thing was, if you try to stop it, there's a part of your brain that's going to fight that. But if you just say, you know what, let's just wait 10 minutes and then you can have that glass of wine or you can have that cookie or you can have that cigarette. And what I would add that he didn't say that goes to this is, you don't even need to say 10 minutes, but just before you're about to do a behavior that you don't want to do, possibly just say, you know what, there's something in my body that there's a feeling that is triggering me to do that behavior. And so just say, you know what, I'm just going to take a minute before I have that cigarette and I'm just going to sit and feel where in my body do I feel the feeling. And just sit with it for that minute. You can still have the cigarette after a minute, but my bet is that you might realize that cigarette's actually being triggered by a physical sensation. And so I think it's a great strategy, and I've kind of forgotten about it, but now I'll remember, and again, you don't have to tell your brain you're not going to have that cigarette or that glass of wine or whatever it might be. Chocolate cake. But you're just going to say, you know what, we're just going to wait a minute, and during that minute, I'm just going to sit and feel in my body and feel where am I feeling something uncomfortable, or just maybe not uncomfortable, just what's the feeling, and sit with it for a minute, and then go do what you want to do after that. It's a more intentional, I think, and you're choosing that behavior from maybe a point of clarity versus reacting to a feeling in your body.
So Graham, tell us, Graham, how's the intimacy? And intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is touching, hugging, kissing, soft eyes across the room. Like all of those things contribute to intimacy, and including sex. But has it changed since you've had this revelation?
Yeah, no, I think our relationship has changed in general. I mean, it feels much lighter. But again, part of it is because we're not having these little weird random blow-ups where I'm stressed about something and reacting. So, but yeah, no, I think our whole relationship feels different. We feel more connected. We're talking about a lot more things. It just feels lighter in general. So yeah, no, it's a big improvement. And I think, again, I always talk about from a guy's perspective, but guys are just like, if she would just have sex with me, then everything would be better. And it's just not true. And I do think that until you get the communication straightened out and the guys are feeling their emotions to some degree, that it's always going to be a challenge. So yeah, big improvement.
Yeah, and I have to say from a female perspective, because I think I'm going to represent a lot of women and men, honestly. For me, when I have a relationship with someone, it's all about a connection. And I'm very deep with my connections. I go there, I talk very deeply with people. I'm very, again, emotional. I'm talking about private things. That's just my personality. So for me, I want to feel a connection with a person that I'm married to. And that is something that I've said for many years, is that where's this connection? Like there's something missing, like we're so good together, but yet my heart is longing for something more. And I've said to you, oh my gosh, like it's here. Like this is what I've been waiting for, because it was hard because everything else was so good. But I'm like, maybe, we're just not meant to have that deep connection. So after 24 years, I can honestly say there's like some new connection happening, but the physical happens, in my opinion, physical will happen secondary. How do I say it, Graham? Correct me.
I think secondarily would be good.
Secondarily, because I do make up words all the time. So adult chair works. So the physical will happen. But for me, the emotional that I've been looking for and longing for with you, it's just gone much deeper. So of course, the physical, like I want the physical more now, and it's new and it's fresh. So for all the women out there that are like, oh God, it's Saturday, I've got to have Saturday sex. I know what Saturday sex is like. It changes. Like when you've got someone that really wants to connect with you in this way and is able to connect with you in this way, everything changes. But again, it's not just to say that the men out there need to learn how to feel their emotions. The women have to learn how to feel their emotions. And if you missed what Graham said, you can change. I believe this is true. You can change any relationship by you showing up in a different way. So you think about people doing a dance. So if Graham and I were doing, let's say, the waltz for all these years, I started showing up doing like hip hop over the last few years, meaning I'm not waltzing with you anymore. I'm not doing what we've done all these years. I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to shrink down when you get angry. I'm speaking up for myself. I have been working on, again, transforming, healing this codependency for so much of my life. And it got to this tipping point quite a few years, I don't know, in the last 10 years, probably when I really started working hard on living in this adult chair. And I started showing up for myself in a new way. I had these really, much stronger boundaries than I'd ever had. I wasn't tolerating some of the behavior and the dialogue that you and I would have. So when that happened, like he said, that caused you to go, well, wait a minute, I can't get away with that anymore. Like, that means I might need to change. So don't give up hope if you're in a relationship and you're like, oh God, how do I get this guy or this woman to change? You change first. You work on yourself first. Get yourself as healthy as possible. And let me tell you what, there's not an end point. You're not going to cross the finish line. I am, and Graham is much healthier than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 years ago, than we were 20 years ago, but it's an ongoing journey. I will always work on myself. I will always work to make myself healthier. You do the same. Like, it's a journey. So Just make the effort to work on yourself and get yourself healthy. Living in this adult chair, which is living with more consciousness, living in the moment, living with fact and truth and staying out of story and assumption, living with boundaries, speaking up for yourself, living with your own empowerment. Living like this will change any relationship. And this is why I wanted to have Graham on today, because it totally has changed ours. And it's like everything is fast forwarded just in the last few months. It's kind of crazy what's been going on.
It really is. And the visual I get is that when I would have all these moments, I was like at a fork in the road between choosing to sit in my adolescent chair, which is going to be attacking and stories, and being in the adult chair, which is listening and trying to understand. And again, so this feeling the emotions for me, it's when anybody, male or female, is kind of at that fork between, am I going to jump in that adolescent chair and not be the highest version of myself, or am I able to sit in the adult chair? And so again, for me, that visual is, if I can just pause for a minute and feel the physical sensation of my body, there's a much better chance that I'm going to end up sitting my butt in that adult chair versus the adolescent.
That was really good. Thank you. All right, I think we have... We're done here.
I'm done for another 200 episodes, so I'll see you around.
Well, let's see if we get any feedback. If we get some positive feedback, I'll tell you what, you guys. If you
wait a sec, yeah, come on, people, I need you. It's like every podcast asks. I need a good rating. I need you to send the messages in. To ask for more Graham.
Yeah, so email into michelle@michellechalfant.com if you want to have more Graham on. And I'll have more Graham on.
I'm just kidding. I'll be back when the time is right. I'm a much better listener than I am a speaker. So.
No, but I think it's good to have the male perspective represented. And so if you guys want to hear more Graham, you let me know, and I just might have him on within the next 200 episodes.
Yeah, and hopefully if I keep improving, you'll get fewer and fewer bad examples of me on the podcast either way.
I know, I don't like this because I really do enjoy using you as my examples in the workshops and in my certification and, of course, on the podcast.
Yeah, what not to do?
What am I going to do?
I don't know.
Jeez, okay. All right, you guys, I know we mentioned a lot today on the show, but I want to remind you that if you go to theadultchair.com/podcast, there's a little search bar. You can put in any keyword, and I probably have done a podcast on it, if not multiple, like feeling emotions. Just put in the word emotions, and they'll all pop up. And I've broken down how you feel your emotions. I've also done the somatic training, so I know a lot about, of course, what Graham is saying, and I break it down for you on that show. Also, triggers, shadow, healthy relationships. That was, gosh, you guys love that. There are 2 shows on healthy relationships. So, and of course, if you want to hear Graham, what was it? Episodes 42 and 49, way back when.
Just put Graham in the search bar or crazy husbands, whatever will get you to me.
Anyway, all right, you guys. I think that's all I need to share. Bye, Graham.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Graham, we really appreciate your honesty and openness today. Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Okay, everybody. That is all I've got for you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this show. So make sure to hit me up on social media, or of course you can email in and let us know. And I'll see you seated next week right here in the adult chair. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that show. I will have Graham on again. Many of you asked me to do that, and I will do that with you. And again, don't forget to sit down with the one you love and listen to the show with them. This really can apply to just about anybody. Listen to how really getting in touch with what's going on inside can change who you are, but also your relationship. And don't forget, join us if you want to learn how to cultivate more peace in your life and just live with balance. Join the membership at theadultchair.com/membership. And also don't forget the certification, adult chair certification. If you want to be an adult chair certified coach, you got to get on that wait list. Go to theadultchair.com/certification and you will be alerted on July 12th, which is just a few days away. All right, you guys, I'll see you seated next week right here in the adult chair. Have a beautiful week, everybody.